Everyone, welcome to the fourth and final session of the GFN Science Labs today. For the sake of the schedule, we will start now on time. And also, so you're aware, I've changed the speaker order because as chair, I have the liberty to take that on just to create the flow of the material in a little bit more uniform way and lump some related topics together for the sake of ongoing discussion, given how much discussion there's been over the last 2 days in these. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Summer Hanna. I'm the head of scientific regulation at BAT. We've got a great lineup of speakers today, and we will kick things off with Chase Wallace, who will be presenting on Smoke-Free Sweden 2023. Sweden is about to become the first smoke-free country. Chase is an undergraduate student at Emory University in Georgia in the U.S. He's pursuing a career in medicine with a potential focus in international medicinal policy. Chase is a registered emergency medical technician, an experienced YouTube video creator with over 950,000 total views, and a sucker for good graphic design. When he's not in class or in international panels, you can find him working on projects for the Student Government Association or exercising at the gym and working on a new project. So with that, we will turn it over to Chase and have his video kick things off.
Sweden, the land of the lowest smoking rates by far in all of Europe. So low that this year, in 2023, it is set to become, according to official criteria, smoke-free. It's a goal that the EU has asked its member states to achieve by 2040. Most are on track to miss this target, but Sweden will smash it by a staggering 17 years. The country's smoking rate just 15 years ago was more than 150% higher than it is today. The Swedes have shown us the way to be safer and healthier, just like they did when they not only invented the 3-point seatbelt, but donated it to every car manufacturer in the world for free. The seatbelt has saved well over 1 million lives since a Volvo engineer came up with the idea in 1959. Sweden's latest public health miracle could save 3.5 million lives in the next decade if we accept their latest gift to global public health. You see, the Swedes have now effectively wiped out cigarette smoking by developing a specific policy formula that makes alternatives more accessible, more acceptable, and more affordable than cigarettes to consumers. The results speak for themselves. Swedes have long used education, tobacco control measures and snus to keep smoking rates down. But the introduction of modern tobacco-free alternatives, vaping in 2015, and next-generation nicotine pouches, which followed in 2018, turbocharged the smoking decline. In the last decade, smoking rates in Sweden have fallen by an astonishing 55%. The rest of the EU's smoking rates are, on average, 5 times higher than Sweden's, because they have a less supportive policy approach to cigarette alternatives. Compared to the rest of the European Union, Sweden has 44% fewer tobacco-related deaths, a cancer rate that is 41% lower, and 38% fewer deaths attributable to any cancer. If every other country in the EU followed Sweden's example, up to 3.5 million European early deaths would be prevented in just 1 decade. World-renowned public health experts agree.
I think we have the answer already.
Tell the world about the Swedish experience and the mixture of pros and cons that we have had that have been helping people to leave cigarettes and get into something else. It's important for the governments to tell the consumers that if you need your daily nicotine, use this instead of the cigarette.
And this is Sweden's gift to global public health, and why the message to the world when it comes to smoking is quit like Sweden. Smoke-Free Sweden 2023.
Great. Thank you so much, Chase. Are there any other comments you'd like to add before we open the floor up to questions?
Absolutely. So I wish I had the voice of the guy in the video. He has a very nice, nice cadence. But this is a little bit of old news, and you might ask me, okay, so why are we talking about Sweden? This is 2023. We're kind of seeing, the results of that, but why are we still sticking around? And what I tell people is we are now seeing a replication of this same effect in a very far away part of the world, New Zealand. We're seeing, compared to Australia, which has very similar tobacco regulation measures to the EU, that there is still a massive discrepancy in the smoking rate decline. New Zealand has much faster decline, and that's because they are doing exactly what Sweden did, which is pairing tobacco regulation with harm reduction methods like opening up the market for nicotine alternatives. So we're seeing, in a sense, open air experiments that show that this method works. So really, the keys I want you to see from Sweden's experience and now from New Zealand's experience, it comes down to 4 quick things. First, pairing tobacco regulation with harm reduction. Second, having good channels for data collection from governments to say, okay, so how are these pragmatic practices impacting smoker health? Because right now the data we're working off of is very limited, and it's oftentimes years old, and governments don't really put a lot of effort into that. So we need to see kind of more of that in the market. We also need, like Sweden did, risk differentiation through variable taxation and messaging for different products of different risk levels. So you'll see in Sweden that combustible cigarettes, are really highly taxed. So it's inconvenient for people to purchase them and use them, whereas products like oral nicotine pouches or snus are very low taxed, and it's based on the variable rate of risk, which is a very good idea for reducing smoking. And finally, we need a concerted front on all of these issues. We need a government and multi-stakeholder kind of engaged effort to make all of this happen. What happened with COVID, 3.5 million people died from COVID in 2021, and immediately governments were like, okay, we gotta speed everything through. We gotta get, in America, like Pfizer, you gotta get the COVID vaccine in and gotta get it spread out to everyone. Whereas smoking kills 8 million people a year, and we're seeing a very lazy government, half-effort approach, and not aligning stakeholders with policymakers and advocates like ourselves. So we really need a concerted effort on all fronts to really quickly bring this smoking prevalence down, because as it said in the video, if we implement Sweden's practices right now in the EU, 3.5 million lives could be saved by 2040. That is a lot of lives. I don't think we should be sitting thinking, okay, the current tobacco regulation, it's going to get there eventually. I think we should be really pushing to save those people. So anyway, that is Sweden's story, and New Zealand's as well, to a smaller extent.
Great. Thank you so much, Chase. So we'll open the floor to questions now. And if you do have a question, I ask that you wait for the microphone, use the microphone, and introduce yourself before you ask a question.
So I'm Colin Mendelsohn from Australia, so thanks very much for pointing out our recent failure. My question was, to what extent are the oral pouches and vaping playing a role in this decline in smoking?
It's a great question. Originally, when this research came out about Sweden last year, a lot of responses were, okay, but they have snus, which they've had for 200 years as a cultural thing, specifically in Sweden. So this can't really be replicated to other countries because that is a very, specific cultural thing that they have. But it turns out that as soon as vaping and other oral nicotine pouches entered the market around 2017, maybe a little earlier, the rate immediately went down demonstrably in Sweden. So it showed that snus were playing a part, certainly, but that these other products like vapors and everything were really accelerating that decrease of smoking. So it shows that it's replicable across different cultural standpoints. But very good question.
Chase, I've got a question for you. What methods can be used to curb youth use while simultaneously promoting smokeless products in this kind of scenario?
Yeah, so this is actually kind of what I specialize with. I work with health diplomats and tobaccoharmreduction.net to essentially use my experience as a content creator to push out these health messages to younger people, 18 to 35-year-olds. And it is naive, I think, to say, okay, if we are marketing these vaping and e-cigarettes and all of that to older, like current smokers and people who are already smoking, that it'll inevitably be pushed to the same extent to younger people. That's a naive thing to say with the current internet infrastructure, because it's very easy to target advertisements at different areas, different demographics. You can have, age. You can have confirmations of age so that you know who you're dealing with. So really what I focus on is differentiating, okay, we're going to push vaping and vaping as a quitting tool for older smokers who are currently smoking, and using platforms like, sometimes I made a comment about this and people laughed at it, where Facebook is a little bit of an older demographic for people who use that versus something like Instagram or Snapchat or TikTok, and there are some real differences in the demographics of people using that. So really targeting the advertisements to different areas will curb youth usage. And obviously there comes a little bit of collateral youth usage with an increased push towards vaping, but ultimately we're looking at 3.5 million lives to save, or to millions of life years and productive society years to be saved. So ultimately, it's still a risky product, but it's much lower risk than combustible smoking.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Pascal Michel, Public Health Scientist, PMI. Great presentation. Any data on illicit trade that follows that adoptions of harm reductions? Thank you.
That's a great question. So in Sweden, there's not really a need for an illicit trade. The government is so open and kind of is really well regulating these products that there are safer, nicotine products entering the market, and people don't have to go to black markets to do that. Whereas in Australia, sorry to to rag on that again, but Australia has had a huge illicit black market open up in the past few decades, because you can get prescription only vaping. So only if you're sick do you get access to a vape, whereas in New Zealand you don't have to do that, and the vaping prevalence among the youth is about the same between the two. And in fact, Australia is going to overtake New Zealand according to the data in the next few years. So there hasn't been a need really for illicit trade, and I would, even though I don't have the specific numbers for you, I think it's going to be less prevalent than in a country with really strict vaping regulations.
Okay, I'm Norbert Schmidt, German Consumers Organization, IGD. I have a very controversial question. What's so bad about youth vaping compared to youth smoking? Don't they deserve harm reduction? And couldn't youth vaping be seen as harm prevention for if they don't pick up smoking, because they find vaping more satisfying?
Thank you. Very good question. I'm going to defer the answer to that to Colin, because his talk is exactly based around kind of youth vaping and smoking and all of that. So he, I'm sure, has a more fleshed out answer than I do. But thank you.